Hello everyone. So now we are going to run some containers using Docker and Docker Hub, and this demo is on Windows 10. There's another demo that's running on Ubuntu. So it's pretty much the same thing. The interface looks a little different, but the commands are the same. So let's get going with this. So as you can see, I have Docker installed, and there are no images on this system. And there are no containers running. And then there's just some blurb here that you can have a look at, but there's nothing running. I'm mostly going to use the command line because it's the same. It's kind of like using the command line for Git. Then you don't have to worry about configuring something differently or looking for the windows or whatever. So I'm going to do the same thing. So let's have a look at what we need to do here. So the first thing we're going to do is to run Hello World. So Docker run. So unable to find the image, we didn't have any images locally, so it's going to go look at Docker Hub and pull it down for us. So it pulled it down, extracting it, and there we go, it ran it. So it did all of the things that it did on Linux. The first thing it did was it contacted the Docker daemon. The Docker daemon looked for the image. It didn't have the image, so it pulled it from Docker Hub, and then it created a new container and launched the image, so we had a container running. So that's the first thing we do. Now let's run Alpine. So this is where I guess it gets a little interesting. Docker run. So Alpine is a Unix image or a Linux type image. So we're pulling it, it's extracting it. Well, I was pulling it and extracting it and running it, and we get uname A. And notice it says Microsoft Standard, and this is our the container name. So let's run that again. We're creating a new container each time. Let's see, release. Oops, just a second. So there's no release file there, but let's take an ls of the top of the directory T. And there we see all of the standard directories. And if we were to do cat etc hosts, there you can see there's a kind of a full-blown, and that's my container name this time that I ran it. But there's actually a full-blown Linux system that I'm able to run on Windows. So, and the second and subsequent times, you notice it became much faster because I didn't have to download them because I already have those images locally. There are my images, PS all, and notice the Docker commands, they are still Linux type commands, but I'm running on Windows. And these were all running and exited. So I can run on a Windows box, I can run Unix containers no problem. So now let's try doing some port forwarding. So Docker. So, and it's the same idea. And notice all these commands are the same. We're doing the same thing. I want it to run as a daemon, so run in the background and not take over my console. And I'm going to do the same port, I guess. 8123. Well, let's do it 8321 just to do something differently. Port 80. So it's 8123 on the local host and port 80 on the container. And then I want to run Docker getting started. So it has to download the image. The image is a little bigger. Notice all the layers that it has. And of course, the second time that I run this, if I run it again, it will not take so long. But it's doing the same kind of thing that it did on the Unix box. So now it's running, and it should be running in the background. If I run Docker PS, oops. I see all my stopped images and the image that's running right now. And it's doing the same kind of port forwarding that we were doing before. So now let's load it in a browser. Let's pop up an empty browser. And I'm just going to use localhost. So what I'm doing is, since I'm running this on my window box, I'm just going to get to it from localhost. Before I was using my VM, so there we go, 8321. So now I'm looking at, now it's running the same image because it was the same container. And we see, it gives me the information about the, so the little app here is now running on my Windows system. So let's take a look what the images look like. So here I have a couple of more images, not a couple more, I have that extra image. I have Docker getting started, and the created has to do with when it was created on the repository. It does not have anything to do with my system. This has to do with my system. So when the images, remember the images are a digital version, so it's kind of like having software sitting on your system, and then when we load them in the Docker engine, they're running as containers. So that's what we see up here. These images are running as containers. And I can use them over and over. As you can see here, I use the Alpine 4 times. Right now I'm running the getting started once, and I ran hello world once. So let's just try running this again, 22. So I can run multiple versions of it, provided I'm not bound to the same port. So same number of images, but when I look at what's running, as you can see here, I have 2 images of Docker getting started. So what I can do now is localhost 8321, and I get the same thing. So the nice thing that Docker is pretty amazing, but now I have these 2 images running, and I can stop and start them at will. And these are all of the images that we've seen so far. They're all running a version of Linux in the containers. So since I have these 2 images running and I don't really want to run them anymore, I'm going to stop them. This one. And I want to also stop the second one. The others are already stopped. I mean, I might want to leave them up, but in this case I don't. It takes a bit to stop them on the Windows box. Okay, so let's see what's running. So they're all exited right now. So, oh, this one exited with 137. That's interesting. I don't know why. So of course, when I try to load them again, it should time out. They're no longer available because they're no longer running. So I think you should watch the other video because to see the similarities between the 2. But there's also, I just do want to show you something here. So here we can still see, right now I don't have any containers running, but I did have these running before, so it gives me just a slightly different view of it. It's a little fancier. And here. And it also shows me the images that are available on my system. And this was the latest Docker getting started, and it gives me we're going to talk about the layers later, so anyway, that gives you an overview. I can do the same thing at the command line. I just have a little fancier interface. I believe there are fancy interfaces for Unix also. So there we go. Hopefully this was helpful.